You're an awesome group. I had a chance to interact with some of you yesterday and to chat with many of you. And I'll tell you, I've been so looking forward to today's session and to sharing with you some of what I see in the world. But look, these are just my opinions, my views. What I really want to do is stir the pot for you a little bit. Because the person you just hugged, that person you just locked in that embrace with, that person is a visionary. I have a simple premise for today's session, that the 1,000 people or so that we have in this room are the 1,000 most important people in the world. I wasn't done with the sentence. Comma, perhaps. You are the ones who are going to decide. You folks really are the free radicals in your organizations. In your firms, you're the free radicals. You are the people who lead your organization to the edge, to that precipice of technology. And don't let anyone kid you, because although it's all about the human aspect of this, the way our behaviors change, it's also about technology. And the tools do ultimately change the way we behave. And if you don't believe that, I mean, pick up on what was just said. Social networking is all about how these kids are changing their behaviors to interact in a radically different way with the world around them. And you know what? For them, it's not technology. They don't call it technology. Technology is what you haven't grown up with. So look at your law firms. The folks who say, I don't get it, they didn't grow up with it. The folks who don't even ask why, they just get it because they were born with it. Technology is what you don't grow up with, and your challenge is to make it something other than technical. If you try to sell technology by defending the risk, you'll never sell it. You sell technology by promoting the values, the behaviors, the way it changes us for the better. And you know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that we're going to continue a trend that we began several decades ago. The fastest selling medications over the last 2 decades, you want to take a guess? Analgesics and antidepressants. Why? Because we're in pain. Reach for your belt loop, that BlackBerry, you're in pain. You're constantly tethered by technology. Once it becomes a behavior, once it helps you somehow in your life, in your profession, suddenly it's no longer technology. And I think we have to break free of this era of pain. And it's going to take some time to do, and hopefully what I can share with you today by maybe turning a few light bulbs on is how you can move from that era of pain, that era of more technology. Why? Because it's good. To an era where we start to be a bit more suspect of technology and turn it into real, valuable behavior. The thumb and the forefinger. Why? That's a dumb question. These kids aren't asking why. This is the product of the age of more. We've created a generation that unfortunately embraces everything that lands on their lap without asking why. And let me tell you, that is changing, and it's changing rapidly. And much of it is changing because of the economic crisis that's upon us. So you say, what are these kids thinking? Well, guess what? They're not thinking. This is a direct quote from my 14-year-old daughter. We're driving in the car a few days ago. 3 days ago, we're driving in the car, and she asked me a question. I don't know what the question was. I can't remember. Maybe it was, what's the escape velocity of a rocket to, leave the Earth's gravitational pull? And I said, well, I think it's 27,000 miles an hour, but I'm not sure. Let's see if we can figure this out. And instantly she said to me, no, Dad, it's easier to Google than it is to think. Let's go home and Google it. This is how your kids are looking at the world right now. It's easier to Google than it is to think. Google's not a technology for them. It's just the way that they behave. And I'll prove it to you. If I were to ask you, give me a game of uncertainty, a board game, a sports game, some kind of a game of uncertainty, what comes to mind? What do you think of? Poker, card games, what else? What else comes to mind? Someone once said to me, marriage. Interesting. Risk, Stratego, board games like that. Chess, perhaps, right? Games of chance, roulette. What if I were to tell you none of these is a game of uncertainty? They're all games of probability because they have rules. You want a game of uncertainty? Play chess with a 3-year-old. That's a game of uncertainty. Why? There are no rules. There are no rules. It's constantly in motion. Have you ever done that? I taught my son to play chess when he was 3. Boy, he used to piss me off so bad because he would change the rules minute to minute. He would take the king, you'd go into the living room. I'm not coming back until you give up. Adam, that's not part of the game. It is now. That's what we're doing day to day. We're playing chess with 3-year-olds in our lives. And the marketplace keeps throwing stuff at us, and we keep looking back at it saying, that's not the rules I grew up with. Play by the rules. Markets don't do that anymore. We like stillness. We don't like motion. And we are, as human beings, we are programmed to avoid motion. I'm going to prove it to you. We like success. And we like things to stand still because that perpetuates success. When things move, success is threatened. Risk comes into the equation. We like success because it creates a pattern, and we can replicate the pattern. And once we know what the pattern is, we can behave accordingly. When that pattern changes, when disruption comes about, it really disturbs us. We don't like that. And it's not a choice. I mean, it's no easier to choose that than it is to choose the direction of spin. And she's not spinning one way or the other. All you're seeing is silhouettes. Your mind is creating the spin here. She's not spinning. Organizationally, the same dynamic applies. So when you look at an IBM and you say, my God, how can someone overtake them? How could Google overtake Microsoft? Those patterns are so embedded in the psyche, the culture of that organization, that it becomes virtually impossible to extract them. But I'll show you how companies that have extracted them have done it, and what perhaps you can do by modeling yourself after those companies to do the same. Transistor radio. The market thought he was crazy. Over 6 billion pocket transistor radios have been sold in the history of the pocket transistor radio. Sony gets a grip on the entertainment industry as a result. They own music, they own the studios. I mean, they buy up the industry, and they've got it in a lock, They know the pattern really well. And along comes someone who has no business in the music industry, none whatsoever. Aging rock star called Apple and Steve Jobs. And they say, you know what? We're going to take over this industry. And we're going to take it away from Sony. Now, remember, Sony wasn't just the transistor radio. They were the Walkman. I mean, they knew this game. They knew how to go to market, how to create new behaviors. Remember the first Walkman? I mean, I remember when it first came out, and there were these little tiny earphones, and you'd put them on, you felt so silly, because they were like this big. And, you know, I grew up with earphones that were like this, needed a neck brace to put the damn things on because they were so heavy, and that was, you know, good earphones were heavy earphones. And by the way, they only had a 6-foot cord because you wouldn't go more than 6 feet away from your stereo. You wouldn't go out to public with earphones on. Come on, be serious. Along comes Sony, and Sony went to all their competitors and said, hey, look, you know, this idea of small headphones, we think it's a great idea, we want to make an industry standard out of it, and their competitors said, this is nuts, it's crazy, no one's going to want it. Innovation shapes us. We don't shape innovation. You don't ask markets what they want. And along comes Apple out of the blue and decimates Sony's stranglehold of the industry. Decimates it completely. Did they invent anything? You know what? Sony didn't invent the transistor radio. They bought the rights to the transistor. Nothing in that transistor radio was Sony proprietary. Nothing in that Walkman was Sony proprietary. In fact, they even went to the marketplace to try to create industry standards with it. There was nothing in the iPod that was proprietary. Everything they bought, and some of it even from Sony. It's not about invention. It is about changing the way that technology causes us to behave. If you do that, you hit the market nerve. If you do that within your organization, focus on behavior, not on the technology, it no longer is about invention. It's now about creating value in the organization by changing the way people behave and getting them to the point where they can tell you why it's valuable. You can't afford that arrogance. You are the visionaries. You are the innovators. It's up to you to decide. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you very much.